Okay, hello everybody. I think we'll kick off our next session, which is about 5G. So 5G is the next evolution, the fifth generation in mobile networks. As well as being much faster than previous Gs, it's also set to open up lots of new use cases for mobile data, and that hopefully means new opportunities for the public sector. Among many, there's real enthusiasm for 5G, who expect it to enable a whole raft of benefits that haven't yet even been imagined, including new products, new services, new industries, business growth, global competition, and increased productivity. At the same time, some say that projections such as these are overhyped, and we won't see all these advantages at once, if at all. Here in the West Midlands, we're really fortunate in that we have the West Midlands 5G, an organisation set up by the region to deliver the first region-wide 5G testbed. And in Wolverhampton, Coventry, Birmingham, we're going to see our cities in the West Midlands launch 5G, looking to open up opportunities for people across the cities to take advantage and benefit from these new technologies. So our next session is a panel debate on the opportunities that 5G promises. Our session speakers are Martin Ferguson, who's the Policy and Research Director from Socitm, and Rhys Enfield, who's the Head of Infrastructure Acceleration, West Midlands 5G. So over to you, Martin.
Well, hello everybody. It's time to share some love about 5G. Well, maybe. We'll see. That's me. So what I'd like to do really is have more of a discussion, and it's not just going to be a debate up here on the platform. Hopefully we can have a bit of a discussion and share experiences. But this was my experience last week. So here I was on the Hallingdal Trail in Norway, mountainous area, rural, about 150 kilometres or more from Oslo, and there we have a 4G mast. In rural Norway, 4G is the norm. I wish I could say the same about my train journey from St Albans into London every day. I maybe get 4G for about a third of the distance, of 23 miles on that little stretch on the Thameslink line. So I'm going to talk a little bit about 5G from three different aspects. What's the purpose? What's the problem we're trying to fix with 5G? What are the conditions for its deployment? What is the technology itself, and how can it help our organisations to address local priorities? And then thirdly, what are the kind of tasks that we're going to actually perform with 5G? Are they actually any different from what we could do with other technologies? So that mast posed the question in my mind, as I say, what's the problem we're trying to fix? In Norway, they have a very clear vision around ubiquitous telecommunications, high-speed communications to support communities wherever they are in Norway. Why should we bother? I'm closer to home. I'm a trustee for Rennie Grove Hospice Care in West Herts and South Buckinghamshire, and they have 200 nurses out there every day, 24 hours by 7, 365 days a year, and on less than 50% of our patch do they have decent mobile coverage, and that hampers the work that they can do with patients who are very vulnerable and reaching the end of their lives, because the service is a hospice at home service. They take it to the people where they are. They need that telecommunications coverage. So to put it bluntly, I would suggest that 5G is simply a ploy to extract more profit from ever more concentrated groupings of people, businesses, and things. To be even more provocative, I'd suggest that full fibre and 5G is part of a wider conspiracy by big tech companies, think tanks, and many others, a conspiracy that is maybe deliberate, it may be unintentional. But it's wrapped up in terms like smart city, Internet of Things, big data, business intelligence, and much more. To go further, their rhetoric is designed to create a mindset, a technology-led paradigm that 5G is somehow good for our well-being. This paradigm ignores the patchwork of economic, social, and environmental ecologies that are vital to the survival of the places in which we live, whether they're urban, semi-rural, or rural. The paradigm works against sustainability of places by ignoring their wider context. The focus on city, in what? When you think about the supply chains, the logistics, the things that make cities work, cities do not exist as islands on their own. The paradigm undermines, in my view, the well-being of people. Now, Socitm espouses a number of key principles. It's the society of innovation, technology, and modernisation, first and foremost, to serve people, places, and better outcomes, things you'll have heard in earlier presentations today. And underlying principles include things like universality, inclusion, collaboration. So, how does the innovation of 5G support these principles? If we look at the conditions for deployment, the hugely diverse geography, geology, geophysical environments in the UK that have generated equally diverse natural environments, societies, economics, people, and organisations. We have affluent to poor, we have connected to isolated, we have urban to rural, growth to decline, young and ageing, low cost to serve, high cost to serve places. So what is 5G technology then? Is it high speed and connectivity? Faster loading. Would be good to have loading at all in some places, as I've indicated earlier. 5G phone with a 5G signal will be no different to your phone today. Additional speed and low latency will not change your experience on the phone. If we have a decent signal, our phones are already fast enough. Connect more devices at home or in my business. Well, I seem to have a lot of devices at home connected already. So what's the difference? An affordable service. I could download videos in an instant in my queue at the airport so I can look at them on a plane. But at what price? Is this a distraction that the operators present to us for their expensive 5G devices and plans? Some companies are talking about different tiers of service for different activities performed on a device, a euphemism for we can charge our customers yet more. Affordable and usable device options. 5G phones are still a beta technology. They run hot and they eat battery life. Different carriers, they adopt different 5G standards, and there's no such thing as an unlocked phone anymore. The technology, in terms of devices, has a limited life as the standards will coalesce and as the technology improves. And of course, they're more expensive than 4G devices, possibly 25-30% more. And what about ubiquitous coverage? More network capacity for more users and devices, but it won't be available anytime soon, and certainly not universally. There are 3 types of 5G. Low band, not dissimilar in reach and service to 4G. There's mid-band, better speed, but towers no more than 1 mile apart. 4G towers can sometimes reach 30+ miles. And then there's millimetre wave, the fastest, super fast, line of sight, antennas every 800 feet. But it doesn't pass through walls. Recent deployments in the US, test deployments at football matches, gave partial coverage at best in the stadia. So what can we do? We could send text messages, make phone calls, browse the internet, stream videos, access corporate systems, and email. But can't we do that already? How will 5G help achieve better outcomes for people, businesses, local authorities, their partners in the diverse landscapes of places throughout the UK? There was a recent report, The Value of 5G for Cities and Communities. Bit of a giveaway that. Just focus on cities, that's all that really matters. Communities, well, I struggled to find any reference to communities in the report. It was all about the technology. And it was hard to find many examples in that report that could not be achieved by other technology. Now, you might say, yes, there probably are exceptions. So areas where there may be high concentrations of sensors with requirements for large volumes of data transfer and immediate processing and response. So taking advantage of the low latency that does come with 5G technology. Higher security, maybe. So in ambulances, the idea of informed interventions on the way to hospital. Autonomous vehicles relying on, but what about that ubiquitous coverage? I'm driving along happily, it's a not spot. Stop. How does that work? I'd be interested in your observations. So many questions remain, in my view. How will 5G help nurses monitoring patients and on their home visits to vulnerable people in rural communities? How will 5G help farmers access micro-weather condition data, as we were hearing through LoRaWAN in Norfolk and Suffolk this morning, to determine their crop spraying regimes, data on supply chain logistics, demand and pricing? How will 5G help mobile incident response? How will 5G help social care, environmental, highways and housing maintenance teams program their work more effectively? Now, in October 2019, the Municipal Journal and British Telecom reported on a survey of local authority chief executives and directors to find out their views about 5G. And over half of the respondents said their senior management teams had yet to formally discuss the impact of 5G on their local authority and its operations. The respondents felt frontline services were most likely to feel the impact of 5G, however. So specific services they thought likely to be affected were top of the list: adult social care, children's services and education, followed by highways and parking. They were less convinced that libraries, refuse cleansing, revenues, benefits and other member services would be impacted by 5G. And when it came to the communities that they serve that were likely to benefit from 5G, they named schools, small businesses and startups, as well as bigger companies, hospitals, GP practices and utilities. But interestingly, the survey didn't ask them how 5G would help, just that it would help. So, just to conclude, three questions up there that maybe we can discuss in a moment after Rhys's presentation, and after Rhys has put me right. Just to reflect on what I've been saying from the point of view of an earlier presentation, mindset, approach, technology and outcomes, I think we're approaching 5G with the wrong mindset. We're approaching it with an urban, ring-fenced mindset. No reference to the sort of things that Charles Booth and Beveridge were alluding to in the earlier days of last century. I think we're taking the wrong approach. We're viewing 5G as some kind of revolution, rather than looking at how does 5G sit within the panoply of technologies that we have available to us, and how we can actually make small incremental steps to improve the outcomes for people in the areas in which we live. In terms of technology, I think we have a poor understanding of the capabilities, the limitations and the costs of this technology, probably because we don't know at the present time. And in terms of outcomes, which outcomes are really, truly different and only achievable by the full-scale adoption of 5G. So I'd be interested to hear your views and thinking about, rather than 5G being a panacea, perhaps we should ask how it can coexist with these other technologies, as I say, to help us address the real issues that are important to our people, places, and organisations. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Very interesting perspective. What I would say is, as West Midlands 5G, what we're here to do is to prove or disprove some of these things. So actually look at them and work out whether there are benefits or maybe there isn't. But one point I do agree is it's not just about 5G. It's about potentially networks in general and what they can provide. So I'm Rhys Enfield, Head of Infrastructure Acceleration for West Midlands 5G. So I'm going to talk briefly about what our vision, mission are as West Midlands 5G and how these align with regional objectives, and also what we're doing and how it dovetails with particular digital infrastructure strategies which vary between councils. So at a high level, we have a vision using 5G to make a real and positive difference to people, businesses and public sector in the West Midlands, and our mission to accelerate the adoption of 5G technology to bring opportunities and improvements to the West Midlands, which effectively aligns with local strategies. Although we make reference to 5G there, I think it is clear that some of the work we'll be doing will actually bring in other networks, Wi-Fi networks, IoT networks, 4G networks, because some solutions will need different network to make them work. In terms of alignment with the regional objectives, so there's a number of strategic documents available, starting from the government industrial strategy, the local industrial strategy, and then we've got local authority digital strategies. So these all come up with similar themes, mainly around infrastructure, people, industry and business, places and innovation. And what we're doing at West Midlands 5G fits pretty well with these. So the main underpinning area is all around accelerating 5G and also fibre networks. So how can we deliver network quicker and at lower cost? So facilitating network operators to actually do that in a way that works. And then test, prove and scale 5G services. So this is applications and services. There's a number of areas we're looking at there. So the first one, which is called 5G Accelerator. This is an innovation centre. And there'll be basically 3 hubs, one in Birmingham, one in Coventry and one in Wolverhampton. And this is where businesses, individuals can come and actually test 5G in a test network and potentially take it out onto the live network. So if they've got ideas of how they can improve things, whether that be in the public sector or private sector, it will enable these people to come and trial them and start to test some of these theories and work out actually where the value is. We've also got 4 other areas we've been looking at use cases, so transport and mobility. So we've got quite a close tie-up with Transport for West Midlands. And looking at, for example, sensor networks across the region, which includes things like radar detection and 8K video, for example. So quite a lot of work going on in that space. And then 3 other areas, healthcare, manufacturing and construction, where we've done some initial work, and we'll be looking at developing those further as we go along through the project. Excuse me. So in terms of alignment, looking specifically at the local industrial strategy, there is quite a lot of alignment. So on the left-hand side there, basically what we're doing within West Midlands 5G. And then on the right-hand side, taken directly from the local industrial strategy, you can see that there's areas within market opportunities and specific sectors where we're aligned. So I think at the higher level, we've got a good alignment with that local infrastructure strategy. In terms of digital infrastructure strategy, this varies across councils. So certain councils have got them, others haven't, and I think there's a different, it's something that is being developed currently. As part of our work, we've been encouraging councils to look at digital infrastructure strategies, and where they are in place, for example, they're looking at things like full fibre, wireless connectivity, so not just 5G specifically, smart technologies, 5G, barrier busting, which is all around trying to remove barriers to actually deploying the infrastructure, and then digital economy skills and inclusion. In terms of our project, we've got three main areas, so these sit within my area. Shared infrastructure, so we're looking at what can be done to develop, whether it's commercial and technical solutions, to deploy more network, and that could be small cells as well, and trying to come up with new and innovative models that work for both councils and operators. We've also been collecting public asset data. So there's a document called the Future Telecoms Infrastructure Review from 2018, where the government talked about making public assets available for use for digital infrastructure. We've been utilising that. We've been collecting asset data, putting it into a map, and starting to test that with one of the mobile operators to see if it allows them to access land, buildings, for example, street furniture, and building the process behind that to make it easy to get to that infrastructure, working very closely with the 7 councils within this region to do that. Fibre, we've mapped all existing fibre. We've also got some of the plans from some of the operators to see where they're going, and we're looking at potential business cases, opportunities to go wider with that full fibre plan. That's in development at the moment, and may bring other opportunities to push on with fibre. The last point, barrier busting. So I'm guessing not many people know about the Electronic Communications Code. It's fairly specific. It was a piece of legislation, apart from Peter, of course. So in December 2017, this piece of legislation changed. It altered the relationship between the operators and the landlords where their mobile sites were, and it's caused quite a lot of interruption and disruption within the industry. So we've been working again with councils and operators directly to facilitate those conversations to make sure 5G can be rolled out quickly. Town and country planning, so there's a document called the National Planning Policy Framework, which all councils should work to. Again, there's some inconsistencies about how that's applied. Again, we've been working with councils, and we've been also getting operators in to explain to councils what they've been doing, because they've not been great at doing that either, which has certainly helped to just raise the understanding across the councils as to what is actually happening with 5G. And the final point, using templated, standardised way leaves and agreements. To be honest, we've just pinched them from somewhere else, because we've found some good ones that have been done, particularly in London. Greater London Authority have produced a site agreement which is fairly well balanced, I would say. And we've been sharing that with our councils, saying if you're going to do new agreements, we'd suggest utilising this as a template, as a starting position. And most of them have been doing that, which is good. So hopefully you can see we have got pretty good alignment. Just in terms of our project, so we're due to run to March 2022, and just to give you an indication of the benefits we think we will deliver, so 300 million NPV, greater than 2,000 businesses being engaged in terms of 5G, and over 500,000 citizens engaged in what we're doing with 5G. On the infrastructure side, we're looking to make the West Midlands the UK's most connected region, with having basically more 5G sites compared to other cities and regions, 20% more 5G live sites versus original plan, and reducing that deployment time by 30%. So these are all areas we've been working very closely with the councils and the operators to work out how we can do that, with the idea that any models we develop can be then rolled out across the UK. And that is my final slide. If there are any questions. Okay.
What's the purpose of investing in fibre? Because I thought that, so for example, sometimes at home, our 4G is faster than the broadband
Yeah.
connection. And I thought that 5G was supposed to be so fast that it's going to overtake everybody's home broadband and we wouldn't need Wi-Fi anymore.
Yeah, so basically 5G sites are going to need fibre backhaul. So to basically be able to give the speeds at the site, they need fibre backhaul. Currently operators are putting 10 gig links into sites, potentially 100 gig links in another 3 to 5 years. So that's why we're looking at the fibre in detail as well as to. We're looking at it from a mass perspective, but we're also looking at what it can maybe do for businesses. Are there ways of stimulating demand, looking at the whole demand? So we're looking at what I'd call it a connectivity plan, which is something we're developing and then want to socialise with DCMS and BD UK to see if there's any appetite to support that. So it's, I'd say early stages, but we think there's maybe an opportunity to get some support there. Yeah.
What are the main use cases you've seen so far?
So connected ambulance, which you may or may not be aware of. So this is where a paramedic is given a sort of a machine that can do scanning, and a doctor is in the hospital and is basically able to control what the paramedic is doing. So he's got a joystick, he's got a screen, he can see what's going on. The paramedic's got a camera and what's called a haptic glove. So basically he's able to do the scanning because the paramedic has not got the expertise to do it. The doctor can do it remotely, and basically you can only do it with 5G technology. So there's been 2 trials done. The initial one was actually set up in the QE in Birmingham, and then the second one they actually took an ambulance out on the street, and the guy in the hospital controlled it using BT's 5G network. So I'd say that's probably one of the most compelling ones I've seen so far. I've seen some smaller ones around sort of VR experience in terms of, if you're in a stadium and you're watching a football game, you can bring information into play. One where you could utilise a headset to look at services in a building, for example. So there's quite a few that are in early stages, and I think what we want to see through our innovation centre is people bringing their ideas that can then be developed, because I think everybody talks about it, but nobody really knows what it looks like. And that's what's exciting about it, is it'll give people the opportunity to try things, and we should start to see things coming out the other end where actually, yes, there is a benefit and it is worth developing into a full commercial product potentially.
Can I ask Tom? Talking earlier, Tom, it's from the old Local Government Association, but worked previously at Milton Keynes, I think. And you were talking about some of the work you were doing there in Milton Keynes with 5G.
Yeah, so similar to you, we're a bit behind. Well, when I worked there, like 4 or 5 months ago, we were sort of collaborating with the private sector companies sort of a long way, looking at the local open university partners, building our own network there. For similar use cases.
Yeah.
The ambulance one was one that they were particularly looking at. And obviously Milton Keynes is known for its good roads, so it's very straight, and autonomous pods were tested there. So there's also a bit about using the 5G network to power those users as well. So anything specific or just general?
I got a question for you, Martin. I think you did a pretty
Yeah, yeah. I was reflecting on that myself as I was preparing this, and I was thinking of the beaching cuts to the railways at the time when we were moving from steam to electric and diesel, and how that left us with gaping holes in our transport network as a consequence. But maybe I'm wrong.
So, yeah, it does work. I don't know if you've heard about the Rural Shared Network. So this is an initiative that the operators and the government have put together, which is to get 95% coverage for 4G, and that's geographic coverage. So that should start to solve a lot of the problems with not spots. We've started to engage with them for this region to try and find out what their plan is and whether they are covering some of the not spots we've already identified. But that's certainly a big step in the right direction.
I think the answer is government intervention, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's basically seeing it as a public good, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
Well, I know the Rural Shared Network, the government are putting about 500 million in, and the operators are putting about 500 million in, so fairly substantial investment.
but not spots are not just rural issues.
Yeah.
No. And I think that's where we want to open that dialogue, particularly because we do see certain areas where I'm not convinced the Rural Shared Network will look at them. So we're looking to see if we can come up with any different models. We know there's commercial entities out there who potentially are looking at ways of filling some of the not spots. So again, it's one of those will take a little bit of time, but I think there will be different solutions come into play.
Do you think one of the things that 5G is going to do is actually stimulate growth in the fibre in the fibre infrastructure, because it's going to need it to operate? It's going to need it for 4G and anything else.
I think 5G will stimulate the fibre and the mobile side of things. So, Wi-Fi 6, for example, the fact that people are starting to look at use cases, it's not just going to be 5G that will deliver those use cases. So I think the fact that people are talking about it and talking about the applications that can come off the back of it, I think will then drive the whole ecosystem, the network behind it, whether it be fixed or mobile.
Rhys, could I ask about the test beds? So we're very fortunate that we're going to have these 3 test beds in the West Midlands. Is there going to be some sort of structured approach to engage with local authorities? Because obviously we've been instrumental to this point in terms of what's taking place. But I mean, I'd certainly like to see some structured approach to bringing councils together, not just singularly, to collaboratively come up with some ideas on how we can use it.
So I can't say a great deal because the contract's not fully signed yet, but there are mechanisms for different, I'll call them users, to go through that innovation centre, whether they be public sector, private sector, SMEs. It's been set up in such a way that it's not dominated by certain, larger companies, for example. We've set it up in a way that allows, I'd say, access for all. So once the contract's signed, then we'll be starting to engage with the 7 councils here as to how we feed certain use cases into that. But we've got to work through that with the consortium that will be running that.
Excellent. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges for us all in this space, rural or urban for that matter, is the sort of working out what are the potential benefits but knock-on impacts of projects that could affect how an environment works. And Rhys and I have talked about one particular one where you can use 5G technology for scanning
point for me is that it ought to be an enabler for us not to have to keep moving around. I mean, that is really the key point, isn't it? Sorry, do you like to?
From an engagement perspective, well, more from a communications perspective, what type of services from local government do you envisage taking you up on the innovation centre sessions?
Okay.
Well, yeah, go on.
I say from what I've seen being brought forward, I think particularly in the sort of social care arena, transport as well, in terms of, like Peter says, you know, how do you actually control the traffic? The trial we're doing with the sort of sensors and radar and cameras is all about getting the information and then being able to use it in a way that is most beneficial. So it may, you know, an outcome may be that certain vehicles aren't allowed on certain roads, or you know the traffic lights are kept on green because there's a highly polluting vehicle coming. You know that it's very early in the thought process, but they're the things that will develop over time. It's difficult for me to comment on the social care side, but that's certainly one that comes up quite a lot in discussion with the councils. I don't know if...
I think anything that helps the NHS reduce beds and people taking up a bed is a helpful for social care.
Yeah. I think the question for me is, you know, where does the low latency that 5G offers and full fibre, where does that actually make a difference? And you know, so in some areas of social care, you may not need that, but in other areas, you will.
And specifically as a rural authority, are you saying that that's what we're taking advantage of for technology that talks to 5G? So in our case, if we don't have as good a coverage, then we can't access that technology.
Yeah.
I think it depends what you're looking at. So, for example, one of the trials I saw was it was effectively somebody's flat, and it was monitoring things like, you know, have they left the cooker on, you know, the lights on, is the person moving around? A lot of that can be done probably through IoT type technology as opposed to 5G. But what I'm seeing is the sort of 5G element is what's driving all the thinking and the development of these applications. So it may be that you can get, I don't know, 70% of what's available, but there's 30% you can't if the coverage is not particularly good for 5G. So that's sort of what I'm seeing at the moment.